that, I think you got the gist of certain things. And I tried to put the whole thing together as to why probably we are faced with such a scenario at this point of time, when everything seemed to be going pretty well about 50 or 60 years back. To my mind, most of today's problems are greatly because of undesired and unhealthy competition to be number one in a rat race. The inherent strengths of every individual are different from that of the other. And the same applies to corporations. Every corporation has its own strength. Every individual has his or her own strength. And we probably try to find a perfect fit even if there isn't one. And because of this rat race and wanting to be number one, we either bite off more than we can chew, or we start cutting corners. We start off with very good intentions. नेक इरादों के साथ शुरुआत तो होती है. But somewhere along the way when we realize that someone is moving ahead of us, I'm not just talking about managing a corporation, because management by consciousness begins with managing yourself. Managing your self. And there is a lot of difference between the two. Both these situations are not good, either for the individual or for the corporation. And somewhere along the way, we hold ourselves responsible for a lot of failures when we probably haven't done anything wrong, or we hold somebody else responsible when we may have been the cause of that rot. In this context, I'd like to share with you a very short poem in the language that I love the most. भाग दौड़ के इस युग में अनुकूल नहीं है भाग दौड़ मेरे लिए. सहज गति से चलना ही स्वाभाविक है मुझे. कहते हैं दौड़ेगा नहीं तो पीछे रह जाएगा. मैं सोचता हूं कौन पीछे कौन आगे. आगे देखता हूं तो मैं देखता हूं मैं सबसे पीछे हूं. पीछे मुड़ के देखता हूं तो मैं सबसे आगे हूं. अपनी ही सहज गति से चलता हूं. धरती पर पांव जमा रहे, कर्तव्य कर्म में रमा रहे. यही बहुत है मेरे लिए, यही बहुत है मेरे लिए. It's a fact. When we begin life, we go to school for about a dozen years. Most of us finish it in a dozen years, no? We take about 3 to 5 to 7 years in college. But we go to work or run an enterprise or run a corporation for 30, 35, 40 years. So what's the great hurry to get to that destination? No, I think we saw it in the slide. Making money is essential, but it is not the essence of everything. If you don't make money, you can't even drive down to come to AMA to listen to me. And I can't reach here either. But there's something else apart from that. I must share one thing with you. At this ripe old age of 57, I've taken up a new hobby very, very recently. Swimming. My coach is a very, very tough man. He's 17 years older than me. He puts me into the water, doesn't let me get out until I have done a certain number of laps. When I get out, honestly, I feel refreshed, but only later in the day I realize that every sinew is hurting. But I guess no pain, no gain. But what happens is, there's only one piece of advice he keeps giving me when I am in the water and when I am moving my arms and my legs. Only one piece of advice. And that's the thing he constantly says, even as I'm struggling with the water, as I move towards the deep end and all the fears of the world surround me. I should have no fears at all. He is one man who's not going to let me drown. He can't dare do it. He's my father-in-law. But I'll tell you what happens. You know what he says? Slow, go very slow, ekdam slow. And then he says something in Gujarati to the extent of the same thing. Go slow. And then I realize, as I slow down my breathing, As I slow down my movement, I'm actually floating in water. Every time I hit the water hard, I feel I'm going to go and hit the tiles at the bottom. Go slow. No one says don't go. No one says don't move forward. No one says don't finish the lap. No one says don't reach the other end. Yes, very much. It's what I keep telling my young friends all the time. You will get to your destination. You're destined to. Your face says it. But aren't you going to enjoy the journey? I'm not the only man saying this, no? The Shire also says, no? Manzil se behtar lagne lage hain ye raaste. The problem with all of us is, whether we're running a company, trying to pass an examination, buy the biggest house possible, get the biggest and the longest car that we want to have, we forget everything else. And then once the car arrives, instead of enjoying the journey and taking the people out to whatever, depending on the season of the year, Bhatiyar Gali or SG Road or Have More or wherever, we think we have less. We actually think we have less. And we think, ye gaadi to aa gayi now. So in that expectation, we stop living in the present. Management by consciousness, ladies and gentlemen, is about being in the here, being in the now, and experiencing it so well that you're thoroughly enjoying it. And so is the other person sitting across the table or on your side of the organization. And that you're here to work together. Would you like me to just point out to 3 or 4 of those relevant slides which probably you may have wanted to see again? Sorry. I won't take you through the entire thing because it will take quite some time, but I think the first is this. That business environment today has gone through a process of natural evolution. This happens. It's happened with human beings. It's happening with organizations. Moving from the physical, economic, social, emotional to the mental, moral paradigm. We've gone through this. But now the next step has to be a spiritual paradigm. And this is being increasingly endorsed by today's leaders who are seeking lasting solutions to world problems beyond traditional theories and defined patterns of management. So which means that there is a need to look at things differently. Everybody agrees that most of the major crises in the world in the last 50 years are all different. But there's only one factor in common, and that is human beings. Whether it is the Commonwealth Games or the IPL, or you can look at Enron, or you can look at Union Carbide, or you could look at the latest that happened 2 days back. Human beings. Whether it is a Rajat Gupta issue, whether it is a Satyam issue, human beings. There's nothing wrong with technology, there's nothing wrong with equipment, there's nothing wrong with anything else. It's what human beings are doing or wanting to become, though they have the potential to become. Now, one of the greatest management thinkers in the world, he is considered to be among the top 20 management thinkers, Peter Senge. And he says, now this is something remarkably interesting, the Western model itself is basically bankrupt. And what do we want to do? We want to get out of the shores of our country at the earliest because we think the US, please don't, you don't need to subscribe to my theory in part or in whole. The fundamental rights of the Constitution permit you freedom of thought, speech, and action outside the hall. But what is extremely important is to look at the fact that we have a lot in India that we can take advantage of, the lessons that we have. Because the real growth happened in the East, that's what he says. I'm going to skip some of these, but take you through this particular thought by Gary Hamel, which says, tomorrow's management system must give as much credence to such timeless human ideals as beauty, justice, truth, love, as they do to the traditional goals of traditional goals of efficiency, advantage, and profit. And we don't, in boardrooms, speak of anything except the last three words. Have you ever heard anyone say in the boardroom, even people in the beauty business, even people in the child care business, even people in the health business, have you heard them genuinely talk about beauty or justice or truth or love, or except, of course, by exception in their taglines of their advertisements? Now this is a sea change. It's not going to be easy. Easier said than done. Respect the divine and love people. You must have heard this. This SMS going the rounds. Things were meant to be used. People were meant to be loved. Has it happened the other way? Preserve the spirit to work fairly and honorably, respecting people, our work, our company, and our global community, to coexist harmoniously with nature. We all collect certificates that we have a green building or that we are a green organization. But honestly, have we started looking beyond the color of green when it comes to paper? Now this one is absolutely mind-blowing. Consciousness is now as valuable to business as mundane assets like capital, energy, or even technology. Mundane assets. And we all thought technology is what's going to zap everyone. And someone is calling it mundane, and this person knows what she's talking about, is a celebrated author and a great management thinker. Someone who studied Mega Trends 2000 very, very deeply. And so this shift from capital consciousness to conscious capitalism, a value-based focus on people. It's going to require a lot of hard work, but I think someone will have to make a beginning, right? I will tell you about Safim a little later, but before that, I just want to, there are just two slides I think that will explain the whole thing. One, what do we mean by integral management? That which looks at all aspects of life, not just physical. We've been talking about physical and emotional, but it goes beyond that to mental and spiritual. It's about building resilience, which is because of this that the next slide talks about what man is and what he can be. In fact, everybody knows that man is full of limitless opportunities which he isn't aware of himself. And it's for each one of us to tap it, A, within ourselves, and then within all those people who are there around us. We'll come to this a little later. The most important thing that I want to share with you now, yes, we are educating our youth. But the FICCI employability quotient of undergraduates in India study, done just a couple of years back, says that Indian youth entering the market, the job market, lack the following qualities: flexibility, creativity, empathy, reliability, integrity, self-motivation, teamwork, willingness to learn, willingness to work, and ownership. Sometimes tongue-in-cheek, I beg to differ with the last point, because that's what I think every youth wants, ownership. But then ownership comes at a certain cost. Now, isn't this odd? We have the largest number of educational institutions probably in the world, and we have the most uneducated youth when it comes to fitment for jobs. Aren't we headed for a major crisis? I do spend a lot of time with the youth. I spend a lot of time with business school students. I find them full of energy. I find them full of pip. I find them full of beans. I think there's nothing wrong with them. But what we're going to do to them in those 2 years or those 3 years is what's going to make a huge difference, where I think all of us need to contribute. Somebody who set up a huge business in beauty and cosmetics, someone who is extremely eco-sensitive, someone who is very, very sensitive to treatment of animals in the preparation of I mean, I'm saying all this because I can vouch for it. I'm one of their customers. A customer, no other connection. And she is talking about us becoming an endangered species. Forget that cats and dogs will not be available for us to conduct experiments on. We will not be existing if we ill-treat nature the way we do right now. So when you run a corporation, you need to look at so many other aspects also. Now comes a vital question, ladies and gentlemen. I think the most vital. Can you name Indian groups or companies or conglomerates that have lived beyond 70 years? And if you were to count them, how many can you count on your hands? Indian. Okay, we have 3 or 4. 70 years. Are we able to go beyond one hand? Isn't this a shame by itself? For a country which is going to celebrate 66, right? 66 years of independence. Why does this happen? Because we don't evolve. We start with great intentions. We do pretty well in the first few years. We grow. And then one day, that growth itself becomes a millstone around our neck. And then they crash and then they collapse, bringing down so many people, so many other organizations. In fact, I'm sure in unison, all of you mentioned the Tatas together. And I think all of you are aware that the Tatas contribute almost 1/3 of their income to some kind of, you could call it socio-charitable or any kind of activity that helps society in general, irrespective of the community, irrespective of the part of the country. 28 listed companies and a turnover that runs into so many zeros. There's no company to match it. Yes, there may be another 3 or 4 groups that have somehow survived. Have a few companies in the group that may probably have faced issues, faced problems. But that's it. And it's quite simple. Somewhere along the way, they have lost the path. And if you have to create social, economic, spiritual, and intellectual capital, it may mean starting all over again. But it's well worth it, isn't it? We have to act now out of choice or have change forced on us. How many of you recognize this person? Just out of curiosity, I'd like to know. Right. Now, she's also talking about this. She's also talking about obsolescence. She's also talking about the need to change, the need to evolve. How many of you, by the way, have seen or been to a township near Pondicherry called Auroville? Just out of curiosity, I'd like to know. Now, that's a wonderful place where there's no country, there's no religion. Everybody belongs to one place, and nobody belongs to anyone in particular. The world is preparing for a change. And the question that the mother asked is what? I mean, I have no right to ask you, but I think we all need to ask ourselves, what are we going to do to change it? And this is where, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to introduce to you a certain thought process from an organization that I got to know. I've been associated with the Sri Aurobindo Foundation for Integral Management in a very different way. They are my co-authors, they are my co-publishers. My book, Beyond the Uncharted Landscape, which is also available for sale outside, courtesy AMA, has made a very preliminary, small little effort to look at integral management, beginning with the youth, because I didn't know where to start. I thought it was too early on my part, too immature on my part, to teach CEOs how to run businesses. I'm myself learning to run one. So I started with the youth, and I wrote a book for them. Along the way, we discovered, we discussed, and we found that there is a tremendous need for us to design training workshops and programs for them which are extremely sensitive to needs of people. There are programs for individuals which touch on values, productivity without anxiety, managing stress with inner poise, understanding each other, improving concentration, having the right attitude and conscious governance. 2 training programs for young leaders, aspiring leaders, progressing leaders, and a series called Embarking, which is for frontliners, people beginning their careers. Professional institution series where students and faculty members can undergo programs to improve their own way of doing things and to teach management by consciousness. And for all of you, any one of you who believes, in the same way as I do, that life is to be enjoyed, Anurag, who introduced me just now, is working on a book. What a wonderful title. Life is a fully paid holiday. Who wouldn't want to have one? I would definitely be the first reader of this book. Why shouldn't life be a fully paid holiday? Because you have earned it, because you have deserved it. For those people, here is this program called Simply Live. Simply Live. Let me again hasten to add, spirituality is not about donning saffron robes. It is not about going to the Himalayas. It is not about giving up worldly things. You continue to do what you're doing, but just be aware of what you're doing. Be a little more sensitive to the needs of other people, and just ensure that everybody around you gets his due. Emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and materially too. In case you wish to know more about these programs, brochures are available outside the hall along with the books. And I have one small request. There is a feedback form with you. Kindly don't fill it up. I shall arrange for a different feedback form to be given to you where I seriously, genuinely want your views on today's discussion. These feedback forms are on their way to you. Kindly take a couple of minutes to fill them up, because this will do all of us a lot of good. Because we are looking at bringing these programs to Ahmedabad. And for those of you who would like to undergo these kind of programs in the beautiful environment of Pondicherry, you can even bring your kids along. There are programs for the kids. They'll be taken care of. So kindly take one, pass on the feedback form to your neighbor, and let me have your views, please. In the meanwhile, Anurag, can I take the liberty of, on your behalf, or maybe questions and answers, could you please moderate?
Do you need a mic for it?
I think I'll send you the okay, for that. Ajay bhai, audience killing.
Sir, I have got one question.
Yes, please.
Sir, despite the availability of a large breed of management professionals,
Yes, sir.
you see today Europe and the USA banks are in intensive care unit.
Yes, sir.
The largest investment bank in the world has collapsed.
Absolutely.
So UNO has conducted a study that today's management professionals are not relevant to the workplace situation. UNO is conducting on pilot plant scale a program in Bangalore by a management college initiated by Canara Bank, how to create a breed of responsible managers.
Right, sir.
Who are relevant to the present workplace situation.
Correct.
Being in the corporate sector, what
Sure.
are your views on this?
Yeah, absolutely. You see, we had a look at those 9 skills that are required. I have my own few to add. I mean, I have this formula which some of my young friends would be familiar with, where I talk about the need for you to be assertive. Not aggressive, but assertive. Speak your mind. Don't be obedient just for the sake of being obedient. Having the determination to succeed against all odds, because nature, business will go through ups and downs, but you should have the resilience, you should have the determination to succeed. Possess excellent communication skills, because at the end of the day, you're going to compete with people from across the world to do business. Be a self-starter, because how you manage your time and yourself is going to make all the difference. Possess the necessary intellectual ability to be able to solve current problems and not refer to old textbooks, because the scenario is going to keep on changing. So be with the times, be mature and responsible, be counted and not be counted out. And finally, be well groomed and have some kind of a personal appearance where the other person would listen to you. Because what happens is when you go to meet anybody in business, the first thing is he looks at you. Beginning from body language to so many other things. These 7 skills, when you look at with these 9 qualities required, I fully agree with you. There is a need to revamp the way things are being done. And even at work, the problem is most managers think, I have someone who's educated, he can start performing from day one. Actually, I think for 2 years, somebody needs hand-holding in whichever position. Even if he is brought in as a CEO, he needs to be groomed to be the CEO in that particular organization all over again. I hope I've answered your question.
This presentation is available on the website, whatever you have.
This presentation, part of this is, I can. In fact, what I will do is make this presentation available through a particular link and share it. I think you'll be filling up this form, so I'll ensure that I'll let you have this.
Sir, you have mentioned that means one has to work emotionally and spiritually at workplace. But don't you think that professionally also has to be?
Yeah. There is a difference between managing emotions and being emotional. Perhaps what has happened is we have picked on one particular aspect. When we say handle emotions, it is about handling the peaks and the troughs. You see, in a given day, we feel very upset, we feel very elated, and the time lag between the two could be as little as 30 minutes. What we are talking about is develop some kind of an equanimity, develop some kind of an equilibrium, a mental equilibrium by which you are able to take the rough with the smooth. Shall I give you a small tip? You see, what happens is, the boss fires us. So what do we say? What do you say?
कुछ भी बोल देंगे कि बिना देखे ये हार कर दिया.
उन्होंने कुछ भी बोल दिया, तो आप क्या करते हैं?
Angry हो गया निकल जाते.
Okay, 1 second, suppose you say, only for a minute. I'm not saying you don't need to go on the defensive or something like that. But suppose we say, maybe something went wrong. Maybe the scenario is really serious. Why don't I just digest what he said? Why don't I just cut out the frills and look at the main core of his what he told me? Then what happens? That's what I said, no? When I pick up the hat from the sea, I wonder who's thrown it here? Who's spoiling my beautiful beach in Madras? Yaar yaam, I say in Tamil, right? But a minute later I say, who could this guy be? क्या वो जिंदा है? क्या वो Indian था? American था? वो यहाँ क्यों आया? And so what happens is, I start looking at things differently. I'll give you a small tip. Whenever you're very happy or whenever you're very sad, just tell yourself one thing. Though I'm not supposed to, but I think I will. I need to give you a few tips. Ahmedabad ma free tips ho joiye ne? Okay. The first one is, just tell yourself, this too shall pass. ये वक्त भी गुजर जाएगा. बुरे से बुरा होगा. In my time management program, Rakesh and Tapan will tell you, I always tell them, you want to have a lovely day? Start your day by eating one big live frog. Don't take me seriously. I am a vegetarian. Take a big live frog. उससे बुरा आगे दिन में क्या करोगे आप? यानी कि take the most difficult task of the day, first thing in the morning, be done with it. The rest of the day is going to be smooth. In other words, focus on what needs to be done. The same way, if that issue is not going to take your life, if that issue is not going to kill you, why let that issue bother you? Someone gets angry, just look at the content, don't worry about the rest of the vocabulary. वो तो होता ही है. हम सामने से गाड़ी लेकर एक आदमी आता है. My wife tells me, I'm a pathetic driver and I keep losing my cool. What do we say? अंधा है क्या? अंधा थोड़ी है, इतनी देर तक तो गाड़ी चला के आया ही. और अगर मुझे देखकर मेरी तरफ गाड़ी लेके आ रहा तो अंधा नहीं हो सकता है. He must be wanting to settle some score. So, it's about developing equanimity. It's not about getting emotional. It's about learning to handle emotions. But then imagine if somebody were mechanic. Are you married?
No.
You're not. Okay. Well, that takes care of a lot of issues. You will learn to handle all that very soon in any case. at interviews, I normally ask people, are you married or happy? You know, so, Anji. Yes, sir.
Good evening, sir. Sir, I would like to get some information about ethics in business. As you mentioned, management by consciousness is a very important part of it.
Yes, sir.
In everybody's life.
Yes, sir.
But don't you think ethics in business is also very much important?
Very much. Very
and
much. In fact,
can you please explain me the difference between consciousness and ethics? Are they correlated or different? Thank you.
you know, I look at it this way. Ethics is like the road you take to reach a particular goal. Consciousness is the spirit with which you take the road. Let me explain it. You have a goal to reach. There are many ways you can reach the goal. You know, you can reach the goal by fair means, you can reach the goal by slightly fair means, you can reach the goal by slightly unfair means, or you can reach the goal by absolute unfair means. Do you agree with me? You decide that you will, as many companies do, and I'm sure many of you represent those companies, that we will not evade excise duty, we will not evade sales tax. Whatever we do will be on paper, whatever we offer to our customer will be shown on the invoice or whatever, right? That is the road you take. That is ethics. But the fact that you keep reminding yourself, but then after some time you don't need to remind yourself. It is naturally built into your aura, your persona, your value systems. That is consciousness. Have I answered your question, sir?
Thanks, sir.
Yes, please.
I have some observation or just comment actually. One of the slides you mentioned that the Western world is bankrupt actually, and most of want to go there to just learn or whatever, including me as well. So, and one more thing, but they are bankrupt, but they got something really good inside of management, or they something good that we can learn from.
Sure, absolutely.
Learn from them.
Sure.
Your example, like the people you put and what they're saying are mostly Western people. So what's your comment?
Absolutely. In fact, when you looked at Safim's philosophy, right through, I've been saying one thing. I'm not asking you to go back to something 3,000 years back and say what, in 326 BC, Chanakya said this, so we need to follow that and all. There are a lot of interesting ideas that have existed, which have been worked on in all these years, and we have benefited from them. Obviously, in terms of technology, we need to borrow tremendously from the West. Obviously, also in methods of measurement, in terms of ensuring that everything gets measured, and that to reach your goal, you need to know where you stand and things like that, they are important. All I'm trying to say is, you don't need to blindly adopt those things, because when you look at the Western world itself is a huge part of the hemisphere. And when you look at it, there are all kinds of organizations, there are all kinds of countries. Some, we look up to them. We were ruled by one of them. But when you look at the economic scenario out there, even the birth of one royal family member must have cost the exchequer one hell of a lot. Right? And whether the country can afford it is a different issue altogether. All I'm saying is, it's a combination. We are not talking about discarding something. We are not talking about running down anything. In fact, I must tell you, Safim's footprints are very nicely entrenched in many parts of the Western world also. A lot of them are coming here to learn from this organization. Because the basic thing is about the human values. And each of those gentlemen who said this are people who live in the West, work predominantly with Western people, but have had very, very good look at. I personally interacted with Peter Senge when he came to India. And he had this to say, there is a lot to learn from each other, but I guess you guys have something which is richer, which is deeper, which you're not taking advantage of. ये वही बात है साहब कि हमने कुर्ता पहनना तब शुरू किया जब जर्मन्स ने पहनना शुरू किया. My wife always says, भरतनाट्यम यहाँ भूल गए लेकिन अमेरिका में उतने ही number of classes हैं भरतनाट्यम के. So maybe one day it will come back to us. It's that. I'm not talking about running down any of those methods at all. We need to help each other. We need to work cohesively. Safim's philosophy is that only. I hope I've answered your question. I can take one more question, please. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Mike.
See, your concept about the consciousness, I believe somewhere touches the most top corporate topic which is the corporate social responsibility nowadays. So how do you like to relate them both?
You know, corporate social responsibility is a huge word. Unfortunately, all of us, you know, and when we get educated and when we think we know a lot, we want to give lots of nice sounding names. And I was always worried. Whenever I talked about management by consciousness, I wanted to simplify it as much as possible. Because otherwise, we have a lot of these silos, you know, like out of the box, paradigms, and things like that. These are very simple things actually. We have given it nice, highfalutin names. Corporate social responsibility means what? Being sensitive to the needs of society in general and people at large. So, every slide, in fact, if you look at it, is touching on. We are not only talking about being good to people, we are talking about being good to nature. We are talking about being good to whatever natural resources and various other resources we have. But at the same time, have respect for people, their thoughts, their emotions, and their sentiments, and being spiritual. Now again, spiritual, nothing to do with being religious and things like that, or being ritualistic. Corporate social responsibility, quite simply, is understanding the needs of society, succeeding, but not at the cost of letting society down. You build up an empire, but you realize that it is hollow from within. You conduct a huge sports activity, but you realize that half a dozen guys have siphoned off more than 80% of the money. That isn't corporate social responsibility. What happens is, you do something in such a way that everybody gains, not only the employers, not only the stakeholders, not only the employees, not only the business associates, but also everybody in society, including the places where you went and set up that enterprise. Everybody benefits, and of course the country does. So I think that is it. And practically every slide here has been talking about following that. Only thing is, we've tried not to talk about, because everybody, it's a buzzword now. It is just like green building and eco-friendly and eco-sensitive and things like that, or organic. We all think we are wearing organic clothes. How organic they are, we don't know. So it's better to, you know, say that, okay, let's be good to ourselves and to everybody around us. That itself for me is CSR. Did I answer your question? Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I hope you've got the time to fill up this feedback form. Thank you so much for your time and your attention on this rainy day. I am honored, I am delighted that so many of you came here. Should you be interested in books from the Aurobindo Society and SAFIM, we have Beyond the Uncharted Landscape, which is co-authored by me. And there's a wonderful book for those of you who are proud Indians called The Wonder That is Sanskrit. We all want to learn French, we all want to learn Japanese, we all want to learn Spanish. There's a very simple book on Sanskrit made easy, and why we all should be proud that we have the world's oldest language here. I'm not wanting you to learn Sanskrit and speak to me, but I think it will give you a wonderful idea about things. And in case you want to know more about SAFIM's programs, there is a brochure you can pick up. And thank you very much. Look forward to touching base with you again. Thank you.
I think we've been very lucky. Just a minute, if you can just wait. I mean, I'll just conclude. We've been very lucky to be here today and to witness and hear such amazing talk, which is very heart-touching and very human. So thank you very much, sir, for being here. Just a small, very small memento from him. Thank you so much. Good night, all of you. Thanks.